Look at this headline that is still very interesting to me. That's on page 10 and 11 of the Daily Nation. Questions judges grapple with in sentencing sexual offenders. High Court judges have been at pains trying to balance between the rule of law and social aspects. Yes? And the story on page 11 reads, this is a ruling that caused huge outcry. 2 years ago, Justice Said Chitembwe caused an outcry when he freed a man convicted of defiling a 13-year-old girl because she behaved like an adult and enjoyed it. Explaining why he freed that person, the judge said that where a child behaves like an adult and willingly sneaks into a man's house for sex, the court should treat such a child as a grown-up. Now, moving on with the story, the judgment has been voted as the world's worst court decision for women's rights by the Gender Justice and Covered Awards, which recognizes the best and worst court rulings on gender equality. I'd really like to get your opinion on this matter. Alice, you are a lawyer. What would you say to this?
Actually, I would get this ruling and read in details, and I would want to follow up. As a lawyer, I'm very interested, but the first impression I have is that this judge was obviously unaware of what he was dealing with. To state, and this is his opinion or some of the concluding remarks in his judgments, you know. As you write the judgments, you have some, you reason, you analyze the facts, and then you come up to findings, and then judgment. If the findings and the statements prior to making now the judgment are that where the child goes to a men's house or men's houses for sex, in my view, that cannot be defilement. A child, and says a child, if there is some wording like that in his judgment, or that the child, then I'm seeing here, the judge further said that the suspect, a former student, youth, blah, blah, had lured her into sex, and then also goes to find that maybe there was no evidence of age. First and foremost, cases of defilement are very sensitive matters because you are dealing with the defilement of a minor. And to that extent, you cannot be a judge that is blind and harsh to the fact that the minor's judgment is not to full capacity. And to reason that that child was in that house for sex without even looking at the fact that it could be a neighbor, could be a relative, could be a friend of the family, could have lured that child with some small things. Sometimes they give them sweets or small monies. Could be a poor child who was hungry and there is food in, and then defilement occurs, whether it's of a boy or a girl. I think this judge should not be sitting in judgments in our courts.
Okay.
And he should be removed by reason of only of this judgment, because his mind is completely demented. I'm sorry to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Fred, this debate takes us really, really back as far as progress that we've made as far as sexual offences are concerned. If you read the beginning of that story, it is a Kikuyu song that has been quoted, that sings, what child judge knows how to kiss, how to order beer, how to fix a date, and keep it. This is really, this story is crazy. I don't know what this story is doing in the nation.
Exactly.
I don't know.
No, but
and let me tell you, Fred, just 3 weeks ago, I was in somewhere called Ro in Homa Bay County, where a child of 12 years old had been defiled. The story was on national television. She had been defiled and she died as a result. So even physiologically, a child under 18 is not ready for sex. And for this kind of story to be here, I'm really appalled.
Because we're talking about, and the Daily Nation on page 10 has done some comparison. Yes, there is a comparison there, right in the middle of the paper, about arguments in other countries. Age lowered in an attempt to tackle the problem of young people getting exposed to sex. Some countries have lowered the marriageable age to reduce conflict with the law. Marriageable age, especially now, for example, in South Africa, which is not very far from us, Denmark, Slovenia, Ukraine, and Estonia have put the marriageable age at 15. Yes?
No, not for Kenya.
Elsewhere, they've given parental consent in Spain, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Germany, United Kingdom, and Hungary. A girl or boy can get married at the age of 16, all subject to parental consent. Now, okay, fine. There are issues where the age is clear, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. But there are issues and concerns in Kenya that probably people who are just about to turn 18, maybe they're 17, and they're maybe in Form 4, they have a relationship, a boy and a girl, just about to turn 18. And then they get into such a relationship, and one of them is actually sentenced for defilement. There are concerns from some sections of society that that is wrong. Do you agree with them?
Well, I think the age of marriage in Kenya is set at 18. There's nothing so difficult in just waiting for 18. If you're 17 and a half, there's nothing too difficult in just waiting for 18. And the cases you're referring to are really the more rare cases. What we are dealing with and what is glaring is adults defiling children. And this has very, very immense negative consequences, including death. So I think the law has been made for the worst case scenario, and that is what we should really stick with.
But it does affect, even as a lawyer, because yes, there was a case, and it was captured in the dailies a few months back, of a parent who complained about her son who had turned 18, but had a relationship with a girl who was 17 in the same class. The boy ended up being sentenced to 25 years in jail for defilement. Such cases are possible as well.
You know, I don't want you to comment a situation where we are talking a boy of 17 and a girl of 15. Because those are the issues. They are actually two minors.
Yes.
But here, the judge did not even ensure that the prosecution, because even the prosecution can be compromised. And we know in these cases they are normally compromised to fail to ascertain the age. Because ascertaining the age is one of the critical things. And there is even medical evidence that you can produce to give you a clearer estimate of age if there is no birth certificate or records of birth.
Yes.
And for a court to proceed with a prosecution that is careless, and we have departments, the children's department, and they are supposed to assist and facilitate, because the end result is that you are seeking for justice. You are not just... And administrative justice is to ensure that actually justice is seen to be done. So to proceed and then argue that there was no evidence of age, looking at the statements the judge has made that this girl appeared to enjoy sex, or that's crap. For heaven's sake, that is crap. Because, Fred, you can imagine your child in a man's house, a girl of 14 and 13, and that girl is saying, you are supposed to be the adult and advising according to the law, and that is a child that requires protection and advice. What kind of a society would we be if we start arguing that a child of 14 is capable of enjoying sex? I think that kind of a judicial officer should actually be disciplined, taken before the JSC, and be put to account in terms of the judgment, because it has actually caused a wild uproar because of its failure to appreciate and understand the rights of the child, the need for a society to protect the child as vulnerable human beings.
It is definitely a very emotive discussion.
This is actually abuse of the highest order.
It's on page 10 and 11. Yes, of the Daily Nation. Questions judges grappled with in sentencing sexual offenders. High Court judges have been at pains trying to balance between the rule of law and social aspects. On page 11 is just one example of such a judgment.
There
the
main
story,
there are many,
the main story is on page 10. Probably it is one thing, because even parents need to educate their children.
Even parents actually sometimes becomes accomplice. They are given some small monies or some goats to actually compensate them for the pain of their children, for the pain of the child. And you see, just look at this issue of the age. If in Kenya we have said the law cuts it at 18 years, that's even like that's the law. That's the bottom line. And if we have no clarity of the law, we start now saying I'm about to be 18, and therefore we are going to be. Can you vote if you are not 18 years?
That reminds me of the very famous song Kumbe ni under 18.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Alice Wahome.